Our film begins in 1929, during the collapse of the global economy as a result of World War I and the spread of corruption everywhere, with everyone searching for a way out of the devastation the country had fallen into, and many people's lives destroyed by war, inflation, and corruption, until a German doctor named Ritter and his wife Dor decide to leave Germany and travel to a remote, deserted island to live there alone. And the only way the world could communicate with them was through letters written by Dr. Ritter and sent on a simple ship that passed by the island every once in a while, with him not knowing whether his letters ever reached Germany or not, and not caring to find out, while the mailbox was nothing more than a wooden box placed on the shore, with the captain taking whatever letters were inside, and Ritter placing upon himself the responsibility of saving humanity by writing a new philosophy of life to help man live without any temptations around him, to live a simple life stripped of unnecessary luxuries, because he believed that man must suffer in order to reach the truth in which lies humanity's salvation and freedom. And all he had on the island was a typewriter on which he documented his experiences and philosophy of life, with the film being inspired by the real-life stories of people who lived such a life. And after 3 years in 1932, the ship appears again, this time carrying a new family heading to the island, including a woman named Margaret, who is writing a letter to her mother, telling her that by the time this letter reaches her, she and her husband will have sold all their belongings to afford the trip to a distant island they plan to live on at the wish of her husband Heinz, along with Heinz's son Harry, who suffers from tuberculosis and whose condition has greatly worsened due to air pollution, with the cost of treatment being far too high for them, and they hope the air on the island will improve Harry's condition at least a little. She writes to her that Heinz is extremely excited about his new life because he is going to meet someone he deeply admires, and they have no idea what awaits them there. But what she does know is that she will stand by her husband no matter what and will encourage him in whatever he wants. And as soon as Margaret sees the island from afar, her facial expression changes and shock is visible on her face because she had expected an island with trees, palm trees, cactus, and a beautiful view. But the reality was far worse than she had imagined. And when Margaret steps onto the island, she keeps looking at the ship as it sails away from her. And with the ship's departure, all of Margaret's visions of a luxurious, happy life fade away, though she is slightly comforted by the thought that she will no longer have to worry about rent, a house, or pollution. While Heinz is overjoyed to have finally arrived at the island of Dr. Ritter, as he is one of his biggest admirers, and he is the only one visibly happy, shown clearly on his face as he prepares himself to meet Dr. Ritter. And they have with them many belongings, boxes, and bags. So they take what they can carry and begin a 45-minute walk to the center of the island toward the doctor's home until they arrive and find him practicing yoga with his wife, Dor. And Heinz calls out to him, introducing himself, his wife, and his son. And he shakes hands with Dor, telling her she must be Ritter's wife, to which Dor replies that she is not his wife because marriage causes illness, and they have abandoned all formalities of society. And the first thing Ritter asks him is how he knew where to find him and why they came to this island. So Heinz tells him that his letters do reach Germany and are sent to the press, which publishes them for the whole country. And everything he writes is followed by all the readers. And those letters inspired him to come live on the island with his family, which makes Ritter feel proud that he has many followers in Germany. And Ritter decides to show him the place until he figures out what to do with him, telling him that life on the island is difficult and not a place for enjoyment, and that he spent 12 months working on the garden they are standing in. Not to mention that the water supply is very limited and must be handled with care, and that the island is full of different animals, including cows and dogs. And the wild boars are the last thing to worry about because they will eat anything in front of them. And although the island's soil is suitable for farming, it requires a long time and great care. While Dor also speaks with Margaret about life on the island, telling her they could die at any moment because of the insects and pests there. And she asks her about Harry, saying she seems to have married young so she could give birth to him. But Margaret tells her that Harry is not her son, that he is Heinz's son from his first, now deceased, wife, and that she takes care of him because he is sick with tuberculosis and they cannot afford his treatment. So it was better for them to find a place with clean air to ease his symptoms a little. And Dor speaks with her while tending to her donkey, showing how attached she is to it, treating it like a pet. And she tells Margaret that Ritter hates her relationship with her donkey because she gives it too much attention, while Heinz looks at Dor from a distance and asks Ritter if she has recovered from her osteosclerosis, to which he replies that she is on her way to recovery and that he takes good care of her. And then he takes Heinz and his family to show them where they will sleep, borrowing Dor's donkey to move some of their belongings to their new sleeping spot, leading them to a cave far from his house that had been built by pirates for them to live in temporarily until they try life on the island. And they find the place extremely dry with no water source except for a very small runoff from rainwater. And Ritter leaves them there laughing, confident they will not endure it and will leave the island soon because he does not want any noise. And when he returns home, Dor is upset, saying that they left the world behind to live alone, and yet the world still will not leave them, and that a naive housewife, a naive bureaucrat, and a small child will not be able to withstand life on the island. To which Ritter replies that he put them in the cave so they would regret coming and go back to their country, because he does not want neighbors. And he deliberately gave them the cave to make them hate their life quickly. And Margaret's first night there turns into a nightmare because of the sound of insects. And indeed, life for them becomes almost like torture, especially for Margaret, who is barely able to endure what is happening. But they all try to create a simple life for themselves in the cave, with Heinz extremely excited about living there and trying to make it a habitable place, working on creating a new water channel so he can store as much rainwater as possible. And as the hard days pass, the exhaustion on Margaret becomes more and more visible, until they finally manage to create a water spring they can drink from, feeling happy that they have finally accomplished something right. But things become even more difficult when Margaret discovers that she is pregnant. And then they find out that the island's dogs have eaten part of their canned food. So they try to hide the rest somewhere far from the dogs so it won't be ruined. And Margaret goes to Dor to borrow her donkey to transport the rest of their belongings from the shore to their cave. But Dor refuses, saying the donkey is busy even though it is doing nothing, forcing Margaret and her husband to carry their things the entire way home on their backs. And on their way, they hear the sound of a gunshot in the sky, coming from a ship on the island's shore with new arrivals, the most notable being the baroness, who immediately appears to be extremely arrogant because of her beauty, arriving with her entourage, which includes Rudy, her engineer, and Rob and Manu, her guards. And as soon as she arrives, she tells her team she is presenting them with the location of her new luxury resort and that she will build it here. With everyone excited about the Baroness's dream, going swimming together in the sea, enjoying themselves, unaware of what awaits them. And after they are done, they all head to Ritter's home, where the Baroness introduces herself and her companions to him, telling him she is pleased to meet the man who tamed nature and founded a famous kingdom whose reputation has reached Germany, London, and France, and that he pulled out all his own teeth to prevent infections, as well as Dor, the woman of steel willpower who defied osteosclerosis and is still able to move. Ritter welcomes them because he knows they will only be staying temporarily on the island, and he shows them a good place to live near a freshwater spring, pointing out Heinz's favorite spring, deliberately intending to annoy Heinz even more. Since the Baroness and her team do not understand the spring's importance, they swim in it as if it were a bathtub, washing their bodies with its fresh water. So Heinz tries to stop them and explain that it is their only drinking water source. The Baroness apologizes for what they did and introduces herself and her team, Rudy, Rob, and Manu, telling them that she came to the island to build her resort there and that she will be their neighbor for a while because the island has become famous thanks to Dr. Ritter's writings. She gives Heinz the mail for himself and for Ritter so he can deliver it personally, apologizes again for what happened at the spring, and leaves. When Heinz goes to deliver the mail, Ritter discovers that his letters have been opened and read, realizing that Heinz did not open them, but that the Baroness did in order to see their contents, and he suspects her intentions toward Heinz, reasoning that if her intentions had been good, she would not have opened the letters herself, but would have given them to him directly when they met at his house. Ritter confronts Heinz to understand why she did it and why she is trying to turn him against Ritter, even though Ritter has done her no harm. She tells Heinz to first ask why Ritter told her about his spring instead of offering it to her himself, revealing that Ritter wants to turn them against each other so they will dislike life on the island and leave, and that they must watch him carefully. She then shows him her plan to build a luxurious resort for the wealthy on the island's shore, explaining that she is studying the project with her team. The next day, the baroness goes to Dr. Ritter and finds a wild boar in his garden, warning him that it is eating his vegetables. Ritter runs toward the boar, trying to chase it out of the garden, and succeeds, but only after the boar has destroyed most of the crops on the land. At the same time, Heinz is walking across the island and comes across a cow among the island's animals, so he decides to take it for himself, letting it run toward his home, and he prepares a place among the rocks for it to live so he can benefit from its milk. Time passes, and spring arrives, with Heinz building a proper house for himself to live in instead of the cave. His wife calls him over to show him their first vegetable harvest, since until now they had been living off canned food and the wild herbs found on the island. Meanwhile, they notice the baroness and her entourage moving in nearby to use their water spring. She tells them she is staying close only until Rudy builds her own farm, but he cannot find a suitable place to create a water spring. Margaret tries to keep them away from her house and spring, and the baroness asks her why she married a man like Heinz, who is older and boring, saying she is far more beautiful and seems to be trying to turn her against him. Margaret replies that she married him out of love, that she is carrying his child, and that she does not need anyone's pity. What she needs is peace in her home. The baroness responds that they will take good care of her, refusing to leave and living next to them by force, while on the other side, Dr. Ritter and Dor are living in their house. After attempting to repair their garden, they are shocked when another wild boar attacks, eating all the vegetables and destroying the soil, which greatly frustrates Ritter because there is no food left for them. He tries to think of what to do until he hears the sound of a gunshot coming from Heinz's house. When he goes there, he is amazed at the life Heinz has managed to build: a fully constructed house, a large farm, and a rifle with which he can hunt. Ritter asks Heinz to give him the head of the cow he hunted in exchange for a chick that Ritter will let him raise. Heinz agrees to the deal, and Margaret asks him if he could deliver her baby since she is close to giving birth, but he refuses, saying he is no longer a doctor and has renounced all the titles society once gave him. The child's chance of survival is roughly 40%, and Ritter takes the cow's head and walks away. It's the first time he has eaten meat in a long time, since he is supposed to be vegetarian, which upsets Dor, who tells him he must stick to his principles and never compromise them, no matter what happens. He explains to her that a vegetarian needs vegetables to eat, and their crops have been destroyed, adding that principles are often shaped by personal interest. He is also surprised by Heinz's success in building a full farm with the help of his wife, whose health is good. Dor feels exhausted from all the work, saying she is trying her best to help, but the problem is that her osteosclerosis has begun affecting her legs, forcing her to use a cane, which frustrates her, and she leaves Heinz. The next day, Rudy appears, digging multiple holes in the island's soil in an attempt to create a fresh water spring like Heinz's, but he fails in his efforts. Frustrated and exhausted from all the digging, he goes to the baroness, who asks him to bring her some food or any canned goods they might have left. He tells her that all the food is gone and that there are no cans left. The baroness searches through her boxes for food, but discovers that Rudy is telling the truth. Everything they had is finished, and there is nothing left for her. She confronts Rudy angrily, blaming him for allowing the supplies to run out, and he lashes out at her, saying she lied to them all, and that there is no hotel, no food, no house. She deceived everyone. Upset by his words, the baroness runs off alone across the island until she falls to the ground, where Harry, Heinz's son, comes from behind to check on her. He tells her he was gathering firewood and heard her crying. She explains that she is upset about what happened, and she continues talking with him until she learns that his family has some canned food at their house, though he does not reveal its location. One day, Harry goes hunting with his father, taking his dog with him, leaving Margaret alone at home. Manuel and Rob are waiting for this moment, planning to steal the canned food from their house without anyone noticing. They continue watching the house from a distance, noticing that Margaret is in pain from her stomach, but they do not care about her and rush to the storage area to search for food, only to find it empty. The pain intensifies for Margaret, so she leaves her house to call for Heinz or Harry to help her. At that moment, Rob and Manuel climb in through the house window and steal all the canned food they can find. Margaret reaches the Baroness's camp and calls out for her to help, but although the Baroness hears her, she ignores her cries and refuses to assist. Margaret returns to her house before the thief thieves can escape, forcing them to hide anywhere to avoid being seen. Margaret tries to deliver her baby on her own, but hears noises outside. As she steps out, the thieves seize the opportunity and run toward the Baroness's camp, showing her the food they stole. But she is displeased because it will only last a few weeks, and she needs much more food for her child. When Rudy realizes Margaret is giving birth, he wants to help her, but the Baroness refuses to let him move, saying he is there to help her only, and that no one else on the island matters. Margaret moves toward the source of the noise and is shocked to see a pack of wild dogs gathered around her, attempting to attack. She screams, hoping someone will hear and rescue her, and hides anywhere she can while trying to deliver her baby. Heinz hears her cries, fires a shot into the air to scare the dogs, and helps her with the birth. After ensuring the baby is healthy, he runs to Dr. Ritter for assistance. Ritter warns him that the island is not a safe place for children, but Heinz reassures him that the baby is fine. Although Margaret is exhausted from childbirth, Ritter goes with him to their house, successfully helping Margaret, and the baby is born healthy. Manuel, observing everything, goes to inform the Baroness that the doctor went to Heinz's house to assist Margaret and that she is now in good health. The Baroness remarks that he should have prevented the doctor from reaching Heinz's house, realizing that now they are becoming allies, and she wants to drive a wedge between them, even at the cost of someone's life. She fires Manuel from his job because he called her a devil and said she was unnatural, and he leaves on the next mail ship that arrives at the island. Time passes, and Margaret writes a letter to her mother, telling her that her health is good, the fresh air is helping stabilize Harry's condition, and life on the island is not as difficult as she had imagined. She also mentions that she now has a healthy grandchild and wishes to reassure the whole family about her well-being. Afterwards, the Baroness comes to Heinz's house to apologize to Margaret for the theft that occurred, revealing that she discovered Manuel was the real thief who stole their canned food for himself, which is why she fired him and forced him to leave the island. She says it is her duty as a neighbor to help, giving Margaret a box of oats from the items Manuel had stolen. She adds that such a beautiful child should not have to live on an island like this, and that they should leave to provide a better life for the baby. On the occasion of the birth, she invites Margaret to a communal lunch she prepared in honor of the child. Margaret goes to tell Heinz about the Baroness's invitation, and he initially objects, convinced that the Baroness is a thief and that none of her guards will act against her. However, he agrees so as not to provoke her further. During the lunch, Dr. Ritter and Dorr are also present, creating a tense atmosphere as everyone dislikes each other. The meal consists of the canned food that Heinz had previously had stolen. The Baroness notices Dorr watching the baby closely and guesses that Dorr has never had children but desires one, so she deliberately brings up pregnancy and childbirth to upset her further. She questions Margaret again about why she married such a boring man. Was it just because he proposed, or was there another reason? She intends to manipulate and entangle everyone in tension. She points out that even the doctor, when sending letters, sends them directly to newspaper editors, so his ideas and opinions reach the public and gain recognition, emphasizing that he is no different from her. No one is inherently above anyone else. And she still dreams of building a world-class resort on the island. She mocks Dorr, saying the project is indeed very successful, and looks at her, taunting that her personal life is far better than that of a lonely woman like her, who cannot have children, perhaps because her husband is infertile. The doctor responds, defending Dorr, explaining that she underwent a hysterectomy, which is why she cannot have children. Dorr becomes upset because he spoke about a personal matter that no one has the right to discuss, and in trying to defend his masculinity, he hurt her deeply. She decides to leave the lunch early, feeling humiliated in front of everyone. The Baroness threatens her with her dog to make her stay in place. The doctor intervenes, demanding that they leave the island immediately, warning that if they refuse, he will chain them and throw them into the sea. Angered by his tone, the Baroness points a gun at him, claiming that he is the one sitting on her island. She shows him a signed document from the governor approving her purchase of 1,000 hectares of land, which she chose, covering the entire island except the small area where his house sits. Although Ritter also bought part of the island, he only owns 13 hectares, the area of his house, so the Baroness claims she has the right to confine him to his house and prevent him from leaving, as all the surrounding land now belongs to her. When Heinz returns home, he finds Ritter waiting and offering 9 kilos of rice in exchange for buying one of his rifles. Heinz agrees because he needs the food. Later that night, Heinz asks his wife why she married him, as the Baroness's words still affect his mind. She explains that she agreed mainly because he proposed, as she had been living with her younger engaged sister, and at 23, her mother always told her she was introverted guarded, shy, and incapable of managing a household. So when he proposed, she accepted and has never regretted marrying him. Meanwhile, Ritter practices with his rifle by hunting the wild pig that previously destroyed his farm, and Dor tries to stop him, but he kills it nonetheless. This frustrates her even more because they came to the island to rid themselves of all feelings of hatred. Yet it's clear that Ritter cannot rid himself of the aggression within him. Time passes until summer arrives, the harshest season of the year, when the water springs dry up and life under the scorching heat becomes torture for all of them. For the first time, Ritter faces a creative crisis and does not write anything in his new book or send any letters to the city. Meanwhile, Heinz faces a food shortage on the island and is forced to hunt reptiles just to find something to eat. They notice Rudy approaching and asking if he can join them for any food he eats. They agree and welcome him, and he tells them that the Baroness's entire life has been taken from films. Her entire persona is artificial, and she only became famous and earned the title baroness because of her beauty, with no other real merits. But the problem is, she is like an infection. Once you fall in love with her, you can never free yourself. He thanks them for the food and returns to his tent. The Baroness, noticing this, realizes he betrayed her and went to befriend Heinz's family for food. He tells her it doesn't matter to him. All that matters is survival, and he doesn't care about her. At this, Ropey hits him until he faints, and this is where the enmity between Rudy and the Baroness begins. Soon, new visitors arrive on the island, most notably a very wealthy businessman and film director who has come to explore life on the island and shoot a movie about it. Everyone on the island is happy he came and invites them all to lunch. He tells them that their accomplishments on the island have caught the world's attention and that he wished he could stay longer, but must continue a sea voyage with his friends. Ritter decides to steal as much food as he can before the rest of it gets taken. Meanwhile, the Baroness tries to seduce him to help her achieve her dream of building a community on the island, but he refuses, telling her she is too presumptuous in her attempts, and he leaves. She watches his ship with tears in her eyes, and when she returns home, she orders her guards to steal all the food Ritter has. Meanwhile, Ritter realizes what's happening and goes to Heinz to help him. They confront the Baroness and threaten her with death if she doesn't return what she stole. Everyone raises their weapons at each other, and Margaret tries desperately to calm them so no one dies. Eventually, everyone returns to their homes frustrated and upset. On the same day, the Baroness tries to manipulate them against each other. She apologizes to Rudy for what she did, claiming that they have no one else but each other, and professes her love, speaking all these sweet words. She convinces Rudy to steal Dory's donkey, which she treats as a beloved pet, and place it near Heinz's house while sabotaging his water supply. Heinz, thinking a wild animal is nearby, fires at the donkey and accidentally kills it. The next day, Dory discovers the donkey is missing and searches for it until she collapses from exhaustion. Heinz returns her home and confesses to Ritter that he accidentally killed the donkey. Before Ritter can get angry, he notices Rudy observing them to see if they've fallen for the Baroness's plan. Ritter then reassures the Baroness that her scheme is working. Now they are attacking each other, and soon one will be eliminated by the other. Heinz and Ritter agree they need to intervene and see that Rudy is hiding in the trees. As they approach, Rudy cries and apologizes for what he did, saying the Baroness manipulated him into causing the donkey's death, and all he wants is to return home. Heinz goes home and instructs Harry and his wife to collect certain herbs far from their house to keep them safe in case shots are fired. Heinz, Rudy, and Ritter gather to confront the Baroness, but Rob attacks them, trying to kill them before any discussion can happen. Heinz manages to stop him and stabs him with a knife. The Baroness then emerges from her tent, pretending she has finally freed herself from Rob's control, claiming he was the source of all the island's problems, and that she feared him. Seeing that everyone is armed, she announces that she is willing to divide the island among the four of them, giving each a quarter share. The water situation is tense, and Margaret hears the sound of a gunshot and realizes that something has happened. Everyone agrees not to speak about what occurred. The next day, Roden pretends that the Baroness and Rob finally left the island, leaving their belongings behind. However, Margaret doesn't believe what she hears and asks Heinz to tell her the truth, since she heard the gunshot and doesn't know its source. She checks her rifle and confirms that no shot came from it, meaning it was Ritter who fired, and hunting isn't his hobby. He must have killed the Baroness. She realizes she must keep a close eye on him because he could betray them at any moment. Doris also doesn't trust Ritter, calling him a traitor because he broke all his principles and destroyed the life they had built together. together. Ritter strikes her due to her behavior, so she leaves him and goes for a walk in the forest, where she runs into Margaret. Margaret warns her about Ritter, saying that isolation has driven him insane. His actions are no longer normal, and he is the one who killed the Baroness. She warns that someone who has killed once could do it again, and mentions the dead chickens on the island, explaining that anyone who eats dead chickens could get poisoned. Doris leaves, deep in thought. Meanwhile, Roden waits for the mailboat to escape and eventually leaves the island, asking the captain to take him to a specific city. The captain agrees, even though the city is against the current and the boat might sink. Back at her house, Doris decides to cook the dead chickens for Ritter to get rid of him. Ritter suffers severe food poisoning and becomes very ill. Doris calls Heinz and Margaret to witness that Ritter dies from the poisoning. Ritter continues to suffer until he dies in front of her. When fall comes, the police arrive on the island to arrest Heinz for the Baroness's murder because Ritter's last message described how he was killed. The officer tells Margaret that her husband is the murderer, and Doris confirms this. Margaret insists that the officer examine the sequence of events carefully, noting that it's unlikely someone who lived on the island for 4 years would die from food poisoning unless it was intentional, since he would have known not to eat the dead chickens. They also need to investigate Doris further. Doris is arrested and sent back to Germany, where she dies from her illness. Heinz and his family remain the only ones living on the island. Rob's body and the Baroness are still missing. As for Roden, his body is found with the fishermen on a remote island, the boat destroyed. Margaret stays on the island until she dies in 2000 at the age of 96. Her grandchildren continue to live on the same island, running a small tourist hotel. This marks the end of the film's summary.